Hello, it's Jason with Insightful Automation, and in today's video we're going to talk about campaign timers. So these timers can be a little tricky, and we're going to go over each one of the timers and some of the pitfalls that are common when dealing with the timers. So I want to show you how to avoid mistakes that can cost you clients and cost you time. So today we're going to be talking about three different types of timers. So for those of you who may not be very familiar, this is the campaign builder inside of Infusionsoft. And as we can see here, we've got three sequences. And inside of each sequence, we have a series of actions. And the way that we can separate the actions is through the use of timers. So in Infusionsoft, we have three different timers we can see over here. We have delay timers, date timers, and field timers. Now, these timers cannot be mixed or matched, right? So I cannot connect a date timer to a series of delay timers. It's not how it works. I can't connect a field timer to a group of delay timers. So I have to use these one type of timer per sequence. And the first one that we're going to be talking about is a delay timer. So the delay timer, I think about these kind of like a kitchen timer. This kind of a dummy timer that you set for a certain period of time, and then it just goes off or runs. Now, it's not exactly like that because you do have some options with it. For example, we see on the right side it says run on any Tuesday of the month. So in this case, it's not just waiting a period of time, it's waiting for a particular day and time. You could set it for a day of the month, such as the 13th or the 14th. But it is going to, it wouldn't be the 13th month of, it wouldn't be the 13th of a particular month. It's the 13th of any month. So these timers are very useful for evergreen sequences. Sequences that are a person can get into at any time, and you want the same wait between each. Okay, so in this sequence, we see we start and we apply a tag. We send off an email, this very standard structure. We'll wait a bit, 3 days. We can jump inside of the timer. We see we can set this for any number of days we wish, or we have different time spans. We've got minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or no delay. No delay can be used, and then we can set it, as we said, to let's say a day of the month. Like we want this to always go out on the 24th. So it doesn't really matter how long it waits. We just want it to go on the 24th. So no delay can be useful for that. Now, we can set these to go off at a particular time or between a particular time. Or if it doesn't really matter, we can set it for any time. And so if we're waiting a number of hours, then if they come in the sequence at 7 a.m. and then we wait 4 hours, and then it will run at 11 a.m. It doesn't really matter. If they come in at 12 p.m., it will run at 4 p.m., right? So anytime, as long as it waits that particular amount of time, and in this case, we would want to use it any day in conjunction with that. Okay, so how do these timers work? It's important that we realize that all of the timers are set when a contact first enters the sequence. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let's just go ahead and publish this real quick, and while it's publishing, I like to see that there. So while this is publishing, I am going to jump into my application, create a brand new contact, and put them into the sequence. So this is going to be timer test. Okay, and it's going to be timer test at timertest.com, timer test, timertest@timertest.com, and I have permission to mail to this person. Now let's go check them out, and we'll add them into the campaign. All right, so we go into our campaigns tab. All right, and add to sequence. This is in our timer campaign that I've set up to show you this, and we're going to jump into the delay timers. All right, so we can see upcoming campaign items. All of these have been set already, so it's depending on when they enter. So they're starting to, their time is building up as they enter. So what happens is, a lot of times, a pitfall that I see is when people jump in and they say, oh, okay, I've got some people at the end of my sequence, and I want to send them something, but I want new people coming into the sequence to get it after 1 day, okay? So I might be tempted to come in here, add a delay timer, and say, okay, well, I want it to go 1 day after I remove that tag, right? And I want it to run any day at any time. It doesn't matter. I just want to run the tag a day after. Maybe I'm saying that they've completed the sequence, something like that, or maybe I'm removing a tag that says, they're receiving a promotion, something like that. So, and I click save, and then let's say that I want to run this action. Okay, any tag is fine. All right. It may not be fine for you. For me, it's fine because this is a sandbox application. So, might be tempted to do this. Well, as we said, the timers are based off when the person enters. So if a person has been in this sequence for 20 days, say, so I wait 3 days, run on the Tuesday, and then wait 1 day, they're not going to queue up on this timer because they've actually been in the sequence longer than this timer would allow for. So let's say that this is 17 days after or something like that. If I'm past that point in time, I'm not going to queue up on this timer. I would have to put this timer for wait at least 20 days or wait at least 30 days, and then I would see my contacts queue up here. Okay, so you can use the terms queue up or catch. Sometimes people say that the timers hold the contacts, so the timer is not going to catch the contacts or hold them or queue them up if they're past the point in the sequence. So hopefully that makes sense. That's a big pitfall. So delay timer is really good for evergreen sequences where someone comes in and you want the same amount of time to always happen, and it's not on any specific day that's going to pass. So the other situation would be a date timer. Now this is really good for an event sequence. So let's say doing a Halloween party or something like that, some type of promotion, or you're going to have an event, people are going to come to it, and once the event's over, then we don't need to give them these reminders anymore, right? So in this case, we would use date timers, okay? So somebody gets into the event, we're going to send them an email, and then we see that these timers are here. The timers are pretty straightforward, just like with the other ones. We set a date that we want it to run on, and we can set it to run at a specific time or between a specific time. So we can use the context time zone, but often because we're using the date timer, it usually means that there's a time that this is going to expire. So most of the time you're not going to want to use the context time zone in conjunction with the date timer. That's just been my experience. So I want to show you something as far as a pitfall with the date timers. These can be pretty tricky because they have some unexpected results. I can put a contact in, and this timer will not hold or catch the contact. The reason is Infusionsoft ignores any timer where there's no actions to the right of the timer between the next timer. So that might sound a bit confusing, but it means that this timer group, there's nothing for it to do after the timer, so it's going to ignore it, and it's going to move to the next timer in the list. Now, let's take a look at this. Go over to the reporting, show you something else. So here I have a person waiting at 10 on a timer that's for 10:30. Now, today's date is 10:06, and so I've placed this person into the sequence. However, why? The question might be, why aren't they being held on this 10:28 timer? So you can see if I go in here and I add someone to the sequence. Let's go back to timers. This is my new contact, and I want to go to date timers. Okay, add this person to the sequence. Okay. Now we see we're queuing up. They're going to get this. Go over here. Let's refresh this. Okay. As we can see, okay, it skipped this first timer because it has no action to the right before the next timer, and now I'm queued up on the 10:28 timer. Okay, so how did this person get over here? Well, we'll talk about that, because a lot of times people will get into a situation where they're trying to adjust the timers. There's been a mistake. Dates have changed. People are at a certain point in the sequence, and we want to kind of shift them backwards and sort everything out. Unfortunately, most of the time, when you get into a really bad situation like this, it's almost better to start everyone into a sequence that actually makes sense. So I'll show you how it can be troublesome to get these timers to work properly. So I've got this person who is ahead of the timers. We can call it like that. And then I've got this person that kind of has skipped this timer because I didn't have an email going. Okay, so what can happen is we'll go back to our edit, jump in here, and I'll say, oh, I forgot to publish this, or, and then I can publish this. Okay, let's publish the campaign. Just take a quick sip of coffee. All right, so let's jump in here and see what has happened. Okay, we're going to refresh this. Okay, now what's happened here? My people have jumped back, right? So this is a new event that no one has ever done before. Okay, so we've gotten these people back. But what can happen here is this person has already received this email. Okay, when we go back and look at one of these contacts. Now, if this email was the one being published, I wouldn't go back and sit on that email again. It's kind of realizing that this email has been already sent out. But if I add something before it, I can kind of get those people back as long as I haven't done anything else in the sequence, right? So it's tricky the way that these contacts respond. So let's take a look at the two different contacts. So we've got this event details reminder 1. I should have named these two different things. You can see I was cloning these to make an example out of them. Let's look at, doesn't want me to see them. Okay, well, we're going to see them anyway. Okay, well, let's just go back in. Okay, let's see if we can. Timer tester. Okay. Campaigns. We look through the recent campaign history. This is odd. Should be able to scroll through that campaign history. Okay, well, it's not letting me see it. But hopefully, without that example, it's pretty clear that the timers can be tricky. It's not going to put them back onto a timer where they've already received it. But if you add new items to the beginning that they have not received, and the timers are before, you can catch the people back on the timers. But then be careful, because they will then get additional things that they had received in the past. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad. That is bad. So, like I said, sometimes when you get into a mess with these date timers, it's almost easier to start people into a new sequence that makes sense. Okay. So the final timer that we're going to go over is going to be field timers. Now, these work in a similar way to the date timers. If the date has passed, then it will skip the timers. So adjust this, do not run. Okay. So if there's no data inside of the field, and I guess what we should first discuss is where you can get the date for these field timers. That's going to be inside of the contact record, and you can see you can create custom fields for your contacts, or you can use some of the date fields that are given to you, like the birthday or the anniversary date. Now, just like the delay timers, the actions are set up from the beginning. So whenever it sees the date in that timer, it creates the future actions based on the date that was in the field at the time the contact entered the sequence. So if I was to update the birthday field, say, and then put this person into the sequence. Okay. Let's go to campaigns, add this person to a sequence, timers, field timers, and add. If I add this person to the sequence, it's going to set up all of the actions based off of the current birthday. Okay, so I actually just made a mistake on this one, because I had updated the field to be a custom field with the birthday example. So easy to fix. Let's make my birthday October the 1st. And what I can do is add to sequence, select, okay, timers. Whoops, better save this first. Okay. Add to sequence, timers, field timers, add. Okay. What should be done? The sent birthday email tag. So it's going to do this in 2018. That's wonderful. Now we've got to think about, that's 3 days before my birthday in 2018. What we've got to think about is, once I get into this sequence, if I go and change my birth date, let's make it, oh, that's not right. It's supposed to be 19 or 1691. Okay, I go back to the campaigns. It is not going to change anything about what has happened or when this will go off. So you see, it's going to, let's go look at the sent birthday email. Still the same date here. It hasn't changed just because I've changed the timer. So in order to reset this field, they'd have to be stopped in the sequence and started back into the sequence. So doing something like sending something, setting a field, sending it again, because you can set field values with this action. You can't send an email, set a timer, send an email, that kind of thing. Try to do something tricky with the API. It's not going to work like that. You'll have to start them into a new sequence or loop this sequence to use the new field information. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that these are linked to each other. Okay, so if I change this from next occurrence to use year from field, all of the timers will change. Okay, and also I cannot add, say, a field timer. Let's say I want to do this, wait 3 days before, wait till the day, wait 3 days after, and then I can't say, okay, well, wait till 3 days before again. Okay, it says you must configure this timer to occur after previous timers. Okay, so you might be thinking, oh, it is after because I want to do the next occurrence, and it's going to be past that time again. That's just not the way that Infusionsoft functions. And the last thing I want to say is something I forgot to mention with the events. These date timers are also connected in that way, where I cannot add a timer in the list that is in the past. Right? Must configure the timer after. Okay. So knowing that and knowing these tips and tricks, you should be better armed to use these timers wisely. And if you run into issues, hopefully this gives you some insight into what may have happened with your timers. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you've gotten something out of this. If you have, please leave me a comment below. And even if you didn't, or please leave me some feedback. Maybe there is something more useful that you would like to see, and I'd be happy to investigate it and get you some additional information about it. So thanks again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.